All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, for tonight's hearing, obviously a pretty big agenda. Number one is a continuation from March. We will hear that item. Number two, on McKinley Street, deferred also from March. We will defer that again until the June 26th meeting.
Okay.
Number three, again, deferred from March, and we will defer again to June 26th as well. Item number four on Harrison Boulevard, we would propose for consent unless the commission has an issue or there is a member of public present.
Okay.
Number five on Logan, we will hear. Number six on McKinley, we will hear. Number seven on Fort Street, we will hear. Number eight on O'Farrell, we will hear. Number nine on 15th Street, we will hear. Number 10 on Flume Street, we will hear. And number 11 on 10th Street, we would propose for the consent agenda.
Okay.
Again, a pretty heavy agenda tonight. I would recommend at the start of the meeting setting a time that the commission is comfortable with ending things, just in the event that we don't get through all of these, just to be transparent. So
Yeah, we talked before, and we think at 10 p.m. we won't hear any new things after 10.
perfect. That sounds great. Okay, we'll see you in a few minutes.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Madam Chair, at 6 o'clock, we can go ahead and get started.
Great. Clerk, can you please? Oh, do you want to do your?
Yeah, we'll
I'm
do
skipping over
the
it.
introduction real quick. Perfect. Yeah.
I'm trying to save time tonight.
I know, right? Yeah, perfect. Good evening and welcome to the Boise City Historic Preservation Commission public hearing. A few things to start out for tonight's proceedings. Everyone entering the public virtually has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you will be called upon and unmuted. There's a chat function in Zoom. This is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. Our procedures for public hearings begin with a presentation from the planning team, then we'll go to the applicant, and then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to public testimony, starting with those who are in person and then signed up on the sign-up sheet in advance, and then anyone else who raises their hand virtually. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony, and then finally, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. And with that, Madam Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you. We are citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by city council. We make final decisions on certificate of appropriateness applications. Any decision made tonight may be appealed to the city council, provided that the appeal is filed within 10 days of this hearing. In order to file an appeal, you must have given written or oral testimony at tonight's meeting. So that's why it's important to give your name and address when you testify tonight. We utilize a consent agenda. This means that if the applicant agrees with the staff report and there's no public opposition to the item, it'll be placed on the consent agenda. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved with one motion without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in order just detailed a few minutes ago with staff, applicant, neighborhood association, and then the public testimony. Thank you for attending tonight. We have a lot to get through. Because of this, we will not be hearing new things after 10 p.m. So we'll do our best to get through everything, and anything that we don't get to by 10 p.m. tonight will be moved to next month. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Pape. Is Pape here?
Yes, sorry, I'm here.
Koski? Maroney?
Here.
Montoto?
Here.
Malloy?
Here.
Otter? Parks?
Here.
5 present, 2 absent.
Thank you. I will make the consent agenda now. Without any objection, I'll place the first item, which is the minutes from March 27th meeting, on the consent agenda. And then we have a couple more items to move to the consent agenda do you have the sign up form? Okay, so the first item that I'm going to move to the consent agenda is item number 4, which is DRH 23-00046, 1216 North Harrison Boulevard. It's a certificate of appropriateness to construct a new detached garage with ADU above the property. Is the applicant here tonight?
Yes.
Thank you. Are you in agreement with the terms and conditions in the staff report?
We are. Thank you.
Fantastic. Is there anyone here to testify in opposition? I have a name on my list, but
That's me.
that's you. Perfect. Okay, fantastic. So hearing no opposition, we'll go ahead and move that to the consent agenda. The next item that I'm going to move to the consent agenda is item number 11, which is DRH 23-00126. It's at 1317 North 10th Street, a certificate of appropriateness to alter the character defining face and construct a new detached garage with ADU above the property. Is the applicant here tonight? Perfect. Are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report? Fantastic. Is there anybody present tonight that's wishing to testify in opposition? No? Hearing none. All right, I will move that to the consent agenda as well. Having built the consent agenda, I need to hear a motion.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Clerk, will you please call roll?
Pape.
Aye.
Maroney.
Aye.
Montoto.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Parks.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Fantastic. And we have a couple items up for deferral tonight. The first one is DRH 23-00039. That's item number 2 on the agenda at 811 East McKinley Street, certificate of appropriateness to construct a duplex on property. Is there anyone present wanting to testify that could not return? Let's see, what's our next meeting next month?
Madam Chair, June 26th.
On June 26th. Fantastic. Okay, so we will go ahead and defer that. And then the next one is DRH 23-00048. That's item number 3 at 1721 North 7th Street, a certificate of appropriateness to construct a new detached garage with ADU above the property. Is there anyone here tonight that's present wanting to testify that cannot return in our June meeting? All right, seeing none, we will defer that as well. And we can dive into our remaining items. So we'll start with item number 1, which is DRH 22-00437. This one was deferred from our March 27th meeting. It's at 150 South 5th Street, an appeal of an administrative certificate of appropriateness approval to construct a standalone prefabricated restroom facility in CW Moore Park. And Josh, if you have the report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one point of clarification real quick. I think we need a motion on those deferrals. I may check with Mary, but I believe we do.
Thanks, Mary.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Montoto.
I move to defer item number 2, DRH 23-00039 and item number 3, DRH 23-00048 to the June 26th, 2023 hearing.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. Staff, can you, or clerk, can you please call roll?
Pape.
Aye.
Maroney.
Aye.
Montoto.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Parks.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. All right, Josh, now. we're
Thank
ready.
you. Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. So at the March 27th, 2023 meeting, we did defer the appeal of DRH 22-00437 at 150 South 5th Street. This is a request by Boise Parks and Recreation to place a prefabricated restroom facility in the existing CW Moore Park. At that March hearing, there was information presented by the appellant that the commission did not have time to fully digest. So the item was moved to tonight's agenda. Within your packet was that report from the appellant, along with some additional public comments that were received after that hearing. Also, some updated renderings from Boise Parks and Recreation were included. So just as a refresher, again, we're at CW Moore Park on the northeast corner of Grove Street and 5th in downtown. The applicant had requested to install the prefabricated restroom facility along the alley side of the park behind the historic arch. These are those updated renderings, perspective renderings that place that facility within the park to give an idea of its more specific location, both in relation to the historic features in the park and to the alley itself. The applicant is here tonight and able to answer questions. One item that had come up during discussion was if there was an ability to paint the facility to perhaps more closely match some of the features in the park. And it sounds like that is an option. I'll let the applicant speak to that during their presentation. With that, our recommendation remains unchanged. We do recommend denial of the appeal, upholding the administrative application approval. With that, I would stand for any questions. And again, the applicant is here and the appellant to speak.
Do you have any questions for staff? I'm sorry.
No, I'm going to be recusing myself though. So
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. All right. Okay, so with no questions for staff, let's go ahead and hear from the applicant.
Madam Chair, I think the appellant will
The
go
appellant.
first. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Sorry,
So
it's
let's
a
have
little
the
confusing.
appellant go first. And if you can just state your name and address. Thank you.
So Madam Chairman and members of the commission, my name is Matthew Reese. I'm at 499 West Main Street, Boise, Idaho, 83702. I do have just start off just with an administrative question, which was there supposed to be a posted meeting notice for this meeting? Because we were really never notified. We got a letter on March 28th stating the giving us that there'd be a meeting on May 22nd, 2022. And I heard from other people that then they never got a notice of this meeting and it wasn't
Okay.
posted. So
So staff, if you
Yeah,
can answer that.
absolutely. Madam Chair, members of the commission. So deferred hearings are not reposted or re-advertised in the newspaper. There is an expectation that interested parties were at that hearing when it was deferred to a date specific. Now, if it was deferred to a date non-specific, we would have to repost and re-advertise, but this was set to May 22nd specifically.
Okay, does that answer your question?
yeah, May
Thank you.
22nd of last year.
So it was just an error in the date.
It's incorrect.
I don't want to go through all this again and then realize because of an administrative thing, we got to do it all over again.
Okay,
Madam Chair, I'm not familiar with the typo in the letter and that's unfortunate. However, at the hearing in March, this was set to this meeting specifically.
okay.
Can I get my time back or?
Sure. Can you please reset
So-
his clock to 20 minutes? Thank you.
I'll kind of start over here again. Again, my name is Matthew Reese, 499 West Main Street, Boise, Idaho, 83702. I'm here tonight to speak in opposition to the proposed Portland Loo restroom at CW Moore Park. I come before you as board president of the historic Belgravia building, which is adjacent to CW Moore Park and would be within 30 feet of the proposed Portland Loo restroom. I also come before you as a unit owner in the condominium. And my personal opinions may or may not be the opinion of the association. But to be clear, we are both in agreement that the proposed Portland Loo location is not appropriate. So a little bit about myself. I'm sorry for repeating myself because I went through this 2 months ago, but I'm an architect practicing architecture here in Boise for the last 30 years. I or my firm have done many historic preservation projects, many of them in downtown Boise. I've been in my office at the Belgravia building for over 20 years. I park in the lot on Grove Street between 5th and 6th Street. And I walk through CW Moore Park probably 2 to 4 times a day, 5 days a week. And I've done this for the last 20 years. So I know CW Moore Park. I know its history. I know what goes on there. I know that the proposed restroom is inappropriate. Although CW Moore Park is not a historic park, it is a historic theme park with many historic artifacts. There are many items in the park that are not historic, but they have been designed and placed in the park to be compatible and complement the historical artifacts of this historical theme park. The theme is complete and it's beautiful, but the Portland Loo is not. The main entry of the park is a reclaimed large sandstone arch masonry structure that was preserved from a historic building here in downtown. As a matter of fact, it's kind of ironic. It was the city of Boise that tore down that building so they could build this beautiful building. That grand entry frames the park plaza, the waterfall, and the historic artifacts. All the details in CW Moore Park have been meticulously thought through. The lights that have been added in the park are historic lamps. The garden walls are reclaimed sandstone from original downtown buildings. The new items that complete the park were designed and constructed to be compatible with the historic theme of the park. The benches have custom cast iron frames with the words Boise Historic Preservation Incorporated. The trash cans, the bollards, the bike racks, all were intentionally designed with a historic theme. Even the joints in the concrete pavement have a historic consideration. Adding the Portland Loo restroom at this proposed location by definition is inappropriate. You would enter the park and the first thing you would see is the restroom and the smell of that restroom. To make room for the structure, a portion of the landscaping with the beautiful magnolia trees that is used to create the shape of a wagon wheel plaza and to help screen that plaza from the service vehicles in the alley. And there are a number of vehicles there. That gets all torn out, a concrete slab poured in, and a prefabricated structure just plopped in its place, right out front, right next to the main entry. There's nothing about this structure that is compatible with the park. Ask yourself this: if there was a proposal to place a Portland Loo at the Ada County landfill, would it look any different than what is being proposed for CW Moore Park? A thoughtful design would place a restroom at the entry, would not place the restroom at the entry. A thoughtful design would provide landscape buffer between the restroom and the function of the park. A thoughtful design would provide open sight lines to a street and parking lot for safety. This is a tall order, but it can be done. You need to look no further than the Cherie Buckner Webb Park because it does have a Portland Loo and it is placed per the manufacturer recommendations. An argument can be made that there now needs to be a public restroom on this end of downtown. We are in luck. The city of Boise is currently planning a park on the corner of 6th and Grove, just a block away from CW Moore Park. From what I have seen, the park is intended to accommodate larger activities and more people. However, none of their concepts had a public restroom proposed. Why is this? The park is closer to commercial activities. They're starting the design from scratch. They have the opportunity to properly place the facility and buffer it. It makes me question if there really is a need for a public restroom, because that park is the logical location for it. CW Moore Park, however, is in need of maintenance and repair. Metalwork desperately needs to be repainted, and there's significant damage to the concrete plaza due to the tree roots. I think this is where the money should be spent. Let's maintain what we already have. CW Moore also has a history of attracting a transient population because of its secluded nature. I see the tents, the sleeping bags, the trash, the drug needles. The one thing I have observed is when these activities are present in the park, nobody else will use the park. I wonder if a public restroom makes these activities more convenient or it becomes a destination point for these activities. I feel the commission should come to the conclusion that the proposed location of the Portland Loo restroom in CW Moore Park is inappropriate based on the following. Number one, because the restroom is located right in the front entry point, it will be a visual atrocity to the park. The structure as proposed competes with the prominent historic elements and does detract from the themed integrity of the park. Number two, there is no design consideration at all of this restroom. And all the other items in that park, that was a requirement, that was a standard. Number three, we would be losing valuable landscaping. Several magnolia trees will be removed from the park, removing a key buffer. And there's been no comment about any tree mitigation to the park, which is typically a Boise City requirement. Finally, the restroom itself doesn't even meet the manufacturer's recommendations for location. And more to talk about this is Victor Miller.
Mr. Miller, if you can please state your name and address for the record.
Victor Miller, live at 834 West Two Rivers Lane in Eagle.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Maroney, nice to see you. You weren't at the last meeting. So some of the stuff I'm talking about is going to be new and some of it will be a little bit of background for you as well.
Thank you.
So as a reminder, I'm Victor Miller. My wife and I own 2 units at the Belgrave. I'm also on the board. Tonight, after reviewing the staff's denial of appeal memorandum, after reading the March 17, 2003 agency response to concerns raised by us about the location of the Loo, we believe we're more convinced than ever that locating a Portland Loo in CW Moore Park makes absolutely no sense and will likely be harmful to local residences and businesses. The process of installing a Portland Loo in CW Moore Park ignores safety concerns, ignores how the park is currently being used, flies in the face of the properly installed Portland U and Sheree Buckner Webb Park, ignores the aesthetics of the park, ignores logistics in securing the Loo, and ignores the budgetary impact of the Loo on the city. In addition, in March, I gave a 14-page testimony, which I asked to be included in the record, and it was not. So my voice has not been included like others have been, and I think that that's not appropriate. So let's get into the reasons why. First, of all the memos, of all the things that were produced by the city, of the 14 pages of concerns that I had, not one single concern was actually addressed. The first one, the most important one, is safety. In my testimony, I raised many safety and logistical concerns relative to the placement of the Portland Loo in the park. Not one of these was addressed in the denial of appeal. As a reminder, I reached out directly to the manufacturer, Portland Loo themselves, a man named Evan Madden, who's the sales manager for the company. And he sent me a study that Washington, D.C. did. By the way, that was their 4th study. You're the only one who's been asked to make a decision on this. DC had 4 studies, and this is the concerns that they have. This one is not, ignores every crime prevention through environmental design principle that the manufacturer requires. It is not in an open, visible location with a lot of pedestrian vehicle traffic. It is not near a commercial area where eyes can be kept on the restroom during the daytime and into the evening. It does not have the nearby business and community buy-in because no one reached out to them. It does not have good street lighting at night, and there was no arrangements that have been made with the police or anybody to monitor this. So The second thing is the installation of the Portland Loo have created some serious issues in a dozen plus other cities that might not be right for C.W. Moore Park and for Boise. For example, the DC study, which talked to 20 plus cities, criminal activity used for shooting up in a dozen plus cities, and they recommended needle drops. They used the possible use for prostitution. They had issues with arson and public nuisance issues, graffiti, sleeping inside them, camping near the loo, maintenance issues, locks broken, broken hinges and hardware, inappropriate items flushed down the toilet, frozen pipes. None of the park and rec documents addressed any of these concerns and their unintended consequences and financial costs to the city. In fact, Chair Montoto, last time, you even mentioned that your children visit that park often, and you seem very concerned that there'd be a chance that there's needle drops outside a bathroom in the place where your kids are going every day. Third, the location of a Portland Loo at C.W. Mark is inconsistent with the actual locations of Portland Loos in other cities, including here in Boise. So these are pictures of the installation of the Portland Loo in
Thank you.
the city park, Cherie Buckner Webb City Park. It fits every single standard that I mentioned before. The sight lines, it's near a road, it's near parking lots, it's not near a residential. We're within 30 feet of a residential. It fits every single criteria. But this one in C.W. Moore fits none of those criteria. So we've already done it right in Ida. We've already done it right in Boise. Let's not do it wrong. Fourth, despite the park and rec, Fourth, no study has been done to assess its actual need. In your own memo, March 17, the Parks and Rec Department proves there is not a great need for a permanent restroom. The city itself states the park site is a reservable site during the reservation season of April 15th to October 15th. That's 6 months. We're narrowing it down. Due to traffic and parking, reservations are only allowed on the weekend after 6, narrowing it down even more to 50 days. And then approximately 10 times per year on average, the park is reserved for events which require restroom service and is anticipated to increase with the growth of downtown. The city currently is placing a portable restroom. 10 days is not worth having something there for 365. So the city admits a bathroom is only needed potentially for a certain amount of time. This does not legitimize a full-time bathroom. By the way, compare this to other cities. Cincinnati, the loo is used 100 to 150 times a day. Portland, 250 times a day. Portland, Olympia, Washington, highly used. Portland, Oregon, highly used. Salt Lake City, 100 times more a day or more a day. San Antonio, the same. This is not going to be used at anywhere close to those levels. There's a sense in placing a Portland Loo in a place where it's ultimately not even serve its basic function. Fifth, there is no financial assessment on what it would cost to operate and monitor the loo. In the dozen plus cities that have purchased a loo, there have been significant security, logistical, and maintenance costs associated with operating the Portland Loo. So with security, there's been monitors in police, and there's been police required in Arcata, Cambridge, Miami, Monterey, Olympia, Portland, Salt Lake City, San Antonio, and Vancouver, BC. Have we even considered what this burden will be? Have we talked to the police? Have we run a budget? Can you show me a budget of what this is going to cost the city? No one's done that work. In addition, there's cleaning. For example, Victoria, BC, City Works cleans it 3 to 4 times a day. Hoboken, 2 times a day. Galveston, 2 times a day. Emeryville, California, three times a day. Needle drops are required in Portland, Salt Lake City, Miami, San Antonio, Smithers, BC, Vancouver, BC, and Victoria, BC. Do we want needle drops, really? In C.W. Moore Park, 0.28 acres. Last part is maintenance costs. Freezing pipes, plumbing, and as I said, a maintenance cost for the restoration of the doors and hinges and things. 6, there's been no due diligence done. Earlier I mentioned a study that we talked about. One of the key takeaways from that study was do the upfront work necessary to ensure business and community support. Has the City of Boise's Historical Preservation Commission investigated the business and community buy-in? Does the Historical Preservation Commission have any evidence that there's a substantial need for this loo? Has the Historical Preservation Commission put together a budget for the incremental cost of this loo? Have the Boise Police Department been consulted? What extra burden will be placed on them? What about the Boise Fire Department? Seventh, on March 27th, I read a 14-page letter into the record and asked that the letter be included in the record. While the report from DC was included, my written comments were not. Many other comments were included, but my 14-page letter was not included. The public record, therefore, is not complete. And so none of the comments critical to the project were made known to the public. The record needs to be corrected and another public meeting should be held once that is corrected. In conclusion, the process to install a Portland loo seems inexplicable. In the quest, it seems, to land a community development block grant, the city has ignored crime prevention through environmental design principles, location guidance provided by real-life examples, including one in our own, logistical issues with the police, fire, and social services, cost budgetary issues, aesthetic issues, proximity to residential buildings, and doing the necessary due diligence to determine whether there's a need for the loo in the park in the first place. This effort seems focused on the block grant, not sound policy or logic. Police were not consulted. The fire department was not consulted. Local businesses were not consulted. Local residents were not consulted. Multiple agencies were not consulted. Multiple agencies were consulted in other cities. Why is the decision resting solely with the Boise Preservation Commission? I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Before you sit down, have the record please show that he submitted photo documentation, and we'll mark it in the record and I'll give these to you. Can we keep these?
You may.
Thank you.
And I'll give you, these are ones from other cities as well, so you can see that the Boise one was properly installed.
Thank you. Excellent.
And this is what we look like now. This is
Okay.
what we would look like when we're ready.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, so we have several photos here.
Any questions or?
Right, let's open it up for questions for the appellant. Do we have any questions? No, I have a couple questions. The first is, sorry?
I was just saying, Matt, have Matt join me.
Yeah, that would be great. The first is, I'm sorry that your letter was not entered into the record, and we'll correct that. The second is, so you have, I just want clarification. So the vendor sent you this study.
Right. So I reached out, I decided I would actually reach out personally to the vendor
Mhm.
and to see what experiences they've had in other cities.
Okay,
So I said specifically, send me pictures of your product in other cities.
Mhm.
That's what you have there.
thank you.
And then I took the pictures personally of the one in Boise,
Okay.
so that you could compare that
Mhm.
the one done in Sri Buckner Red Park is A+,
Okay,
and the other ones, they match the other ones in those cities. That's why I got that for you.
and just for clarification, the vendor said the one in Sri Beckner Web was
No, but
installed
I'm just
correctly.
saying
That's-
it's very consistent with
It's
the other
your
ones.
interpretation of
Yes.
what the study
Right,
said.
and
So,
I'm not a Portland Loo expert. I
okay, so
apologize.
all of the checklist items, it wasn't the vendor saying that about this design. It was your interpretation of
It
the
seems
design
that way
compared
to
to the
me,
study.
yes.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. That was
And
my
then the
question.
vendor, so I asked specifically for any help they could give us to see what concerns were raised. So Washington DC actually proactively went out and did a questionnaire.
Mhm.
They sent it out to 28 cities that actually were using the product.
Okay,
And then what I did is I read that product, I read that report. I
Mhm.
submitted it to everybody last time. It's
Right.
in the record.
right.
But it raised a lot of, I think, alarming concerns, especially for where it's located.
Okay,
It just does not make any sense on any of the ways that this product has been used. And the product already has enough problems on its own.
okay.
And then when you locate it in a bad place, I think it just multiplies the problems.
Okay, and then my other question was, you said needle drops were required and then you listed cities, but it didn't sound like all of the cities that installed these
wasn't all
required.
of
So
them.
that sounds like a city by city decision on what their needs are, correct? Like
Right.
it's not a requirement to have it with these.
That's, no, that was the recommendation of the cities to Washington DC.
Okay,
So 12 cities said, we recommend that you have needle drops with that product.
Okay.
But yeah, that's, and then it all could be where they are too.
Right.
So that it
And,
was.
and how the city's managing those things
Right.
and different levels. Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. And those, I think, are the questions that I had. Did anybody else have questions?
Madam Chair, I do have a question. I have used it once and can't recall. Can you tell me if the Portland Loo located at Sri Buckner Webb Park has needle drops?
That one does, I don't believe it does.
Do you know if any of the city of Boise's Portland Loos have
I
needle
have
drops?
I had no idea.
Okay, thank you.
But we're talking about the transient nature of that particular park. So that's why we have the concerns, the transients, he's seen, the sleeping bags and all that stuff. It just, that's a much different spot. It's more secluded. Those are much more open everywhere else. So
Sure.
I
Thank
would
you.
recommend, I would say that too.
Thank you.
Other questions? No. Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So next up, we'll hear from the applicant. If you can state name, address, everything for the record.
Madam Commissioner, and Board. My name is Jason Miller. I live at 9268 West Tanglewood Boulevard in Boise, Idaho, 83709. And I represent Boise Park and Recreation during this. I'm a landscape architect of Boise Park and Recreation. And I have just a brief presentation that will address a lot of the points that were brought up during this.
Maybe we can pause this time while they're finding the presentation. Thank you. All right, looks like we're good.
Okay, let me first state for the record that Sherry Buckner Webb does have Sharps needles containers in the facility.
Thank you.
That's pretty standard in all of our restroom facilities. And it will be in CW Moore as well. So CW Moore, we're looking at putting the restroom in the park. I wanted to point out that the goals of this were to kind of remove the need for the portable restroom during events. So that's been a frequent use that's been ongoing, in which portable restrooms are inserted right next to the applicant's property for the different events. To provide a restroom amenities to the public, which is a need that's been brought forward to us to utilize our funding available and to address future demand and growth for the surrounding area of the park. The shape of CW Moore is changing almost dynamically every single day. And with the improvements along old Boise blocks, as well as the neighborhood, this park is going to be much more urban in the future. And we're trying to look ahead and doing so. So in terms of the funding, so this is a need that was brought to us at Boise Parks, that there's an opportunity to use a community development block grant for this project. So the community development block grant basically provides resources to address a wide range of community needs, including projects and activities that focus on low to moderate income households such as this one. So this area was looked at in terms of a demographic, and that's where we had the opportunity to add an amenity to the park based on this funding opportunity because of the benefit that it will actually provide in terms of health and welfare to the community. So that's why Boise Parks has moved forward with proposing this facility. I did want to state that since our last meeting, we have been able to extend the funding beyond the June 1st deadline. So this is something that does fit within our time frame for the park. Let me also point out on this slide, the blue arrow indicates where the portable restroom has been going in the park. So there's a lot of constraints within this park. As mentioned, there's a lot of historical elements within the park that we actually lease from the state as a part of our agreement. And each of those elements kind of help shape the character of the park. We recognize that. And you can see like each of the diagrams shown here, we have the W.E. Pierce cupola at the very southwest, the water wheel on the east side. We have the colonnade with all the historical elements around that from the school blocks, as well as the arch within the park. So siting this building is not an easy challenge within this park. There's a lot of existing historical landscaping, and you can see there's a very tiny rectangle there within our zoning requirements to actually place a structure within the park, which we have done in the design. They're also, all of our utilities are located kind of within the alley. So the logic of reducing the impact to the park, that's kind of how we arrived at this location on the site. So I did want to mention, so the impact to the park, we are removing a section of the wall along the north. We are removing 3 magnolias. We do have one tree going back. We plan to mitigate the other trees in conjunction with the urban forester off-site or as a part of the updated master plan in which we're going to be improving the paving and the amenities within the park in the upcoming months on the next project. So that's our impact. Our structure is actually a ROMTech structure that we have proposed for the park. Very similar to the Portland Loo, has the same number of louvers. It's a low-cost option that allows us to put, it's called a sidewalk restroom. And basically, this allows us to, replace it's very similar to the Sherry Buckner Web in terms of the appearance of the building, the structure of the building, and the overall integrity of the building. It was designed with safety considerations, the same as the Portland Loo, which include louvers, lighting, etc. They're equal products essentially. So this is, you guys have seen the elevations of the building, so I won't spend a lot of time on that. I did want to mention on this slide, so we have looked at crime prevention through environmental design in the location of this. There's considerations that we've looked at, including natural surveillance, because this is a visible area in the siding of the building. There are sight lines going to be to this building. It is going to be open in appearance all the way around. We're not creating nooks and crannies where nefarious activity could occur. And we did look at natural access control. It wasn't necessary in this case. That's more like the water wheel where you've got existing fencing kind of preventing the public from getting close to we didn't feel it was appropriate or needed in this application. And then we've also got a minimum of 5-foot clearance around the building so that we can maintain the building. So Boise Parks, we have a proven track record of maintaining and managing our facilities, as in Sherry Buckner Web, as an example. Our graffiti is addressed within 24 hours. We have litter pickup. The park is cared for. These are all part of the crime prevention through environmental design that we just do on an everyday basis. Our staff does. So the building, like I said, there's flexibility, or Josh mentioned there's flexibility in the color of the building. We looked at this as a gray and a brown option. This was simple because we're looking at the lighter the color, the more likely it is to get tagged with graffiti. And that's a pretty common occurrence with Boise Parks. I depicted in the images here, I showed the structure within the park and how we positioned it around the elements that are there. Again, there's a lot of elements. The sight lines through the arches are maintained. The sight lines to the facility are maintained. There's no like hidden nook or area. And the majority of the existing landscaping is going to be preserved and protected in the character and state that it is in now. This is like a northwest view of this. Again, you can see on the back side of this, there's really no area for hiding or any type of activity where you wouldn't be visible. So we feel it's appropriate for this structure. So we did review the report. The report was again provided by Portland Loo, who was not selected to be the supplier of the product. We respect that. They had a lot of really great things that were included in the report and things that we had already looked at. So we just want to acknowledge that our city is not as big as Washington, D.C. We don't have the same level of challenges, but we do have our own challenges that are very similar in a lot of ways. And so some of the key items that we wanted to point out was that we share the goal of the report to provide a needed amenity to the community through our block grant funding and through our building of the restroom. 8 of the 9 users in the cities, basically said that they were clean and safe. And we really appreciate the acknowledgement of Sherry Buckner Web, because our staff does do a lot of things to maintain that facility that the public doesn't see. And we do there are things like the broken locks, the toilets, they're constantly plugged, there's graffiti, and there's frozen pipes, and all of those things do occur at all of our restrooms. But again, we have our track record of addressing them immediately, so we're within a reasonable time frame. So the location has been key to success, and we feel that this is an ideal location with the improved growth in the park. And so that in addition to that, there's lighting infrastructure within the park, and we can look to add future lighting if this becomes a concern with our updated master plan for the park in the coming months ahead. So we feel that there's adequate lighting right now. Again, there's 2 lights on Fifth, there's 2 lights along West Grove, and there's 3 additional lights on the colonnade. So one of the great quotes in the report was that the cost to the city would be much greater if people didn't perceive downtown to be a welcome and clean place to visit. We wholeheartedly agree, and that's why we put so much effort into our facilities, and we don't take the decision of adding an amenity like this to our park lightly. I did want to point out this will be a benefit to public health. It'll be a benefit to personal health for people who live in the community, and then it'll be a benefit to local businesses where people, as this continues to grow, will not continue to seek using a restroom because the nearest restroom is 9 blocks away, which would be Sherry Buckner Webb. So with that, that was our response.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Boise Parks and Rec?
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Miller, can you address briefly why the Portland Loo is set away from the edge of the alley, the distance that it is, and why it might not be closer to the alley itself?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that. So we had a public meeting actually before we submitted for a certificate of appropriateness to get feedback from the community. And at that point, we were looking at, because we had kind of carved out this little area for the existing portable restrooms, we were looking at putting, how can we position the restroom in a way where it would do the least amount of impact to the park, because all of our infrastructure is right there in the alley. And so in taking a close look at that, the appellate, they basically were concerned. They said, hey, this is too close to the alley. We said, okay, we're not going to pursue a variance. We're actually going to move this within our zoning. And it's actually further than our zoning requires us to do. But we really felt like we couldn't move the structure in a direction any other way without significantly changing the historical character of the park. And so that's kind of where we arrived at where we got to. So it is, I believe it's like 12 feet forward. It exceeds the 10-foot minimum from the alley.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. I appreciate the 3-dimensional views. That's helpful to sort of place it in time and space. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may. Mr. Miller, I just want to say I had about 7 questions and your presentation answered every single one. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Right. Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you so much. Is there anyone representing the neighborhood association? No? All right. We will then skip to our list, our sign-up sheet. First on the sign-up sheet is Jennifer Stevens. You can state your name and address, Dr. Stevens.
Hello. Is it on?
Yes.
Okay.
I think
I'm
it's
Jennifer Stevens. I reside at 318 East Highland View Drive, and I own the property at 445 West Main Street in the Belgravia. Thank you so much, Madam Chair and members of the commission, for hearing this evening. In front of you, you see a photograph that was taken on April 28th at 11:53 a.m. And I took that picture. Actually, my husband took the picture. We co-own one of the condos at the Belgravia, just to show just how frequently this particular site is used on a regular basis. We weren't looking for this. Just so happened my husband was walking through, as we've both been doing. He works at the building here that's seen in the picture, CW Moore building. And I, of course, have worked for many years in the Belgravia, even though I'm currently now working at City Hall. So I too have spent a lot of time walking back and forth throughout this park. And I can assure you that it is a very widely used park in the neighborhood. Additionally, we, of course, also have the building going on at the Old Boise blocks, which is going to increase the number of the people using these blocks and the need for the restroom. I, of course, need to point out that the board of the Belgravia Association clearly did not come to the members that own condos in the Belgravia and ask what we all thought. The board took a action that did not involve all the members. My husband and I are very much in support of this restroom. It is needed throughout our city. It's needed for the public. We want our our residents to have a place to use the restroom. Using a toilet is a universal human need. And it's a need for the children that use the park here. It's a need for the adults that use it in the evening. And to suggest that this particular area is not near commuters, shoppers, tourists, residents, and bar and restaurant goers is absurd, considering we are 1 block away from the Bass Block and 1 block from 6th and Main. So I think that it's silly that I even have to say that, but I will say it for the purpose of putting it on the record. I think it's important, and I probably don't need to tell you all this, that this is not a historic park. In fact, I think what happens at this park and what is at this park is rather embarrassing and laughable for the city. And I say that as a member of the city staff and somebody who is deeply invested in the city's history. Sadly, we have a whole bunch of historic things here that have absolutely zero interpretation, zero context for where they sit, and are just a big hodgepodge that make people ask a lot of questions. So to suggest that a bathroom, a public facility, is somehow incongruous with the historicity of this park is, again, sort of laughable. The park does need a new master plan. I'm thrilled that the city is looking at that. I'm thrilled to be the Director of Arts and History now for the city of Boise, and I'm actively involved in what's happening on the old Boise blocks. And building a city that is for everyone involves having a public facility that people can use when they come downtown to frequent our businesses and to recreate in our beautiful city. This is something that all cities have and all cities need, and we need to join them. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. I have Matt Reese, who's already testified, and you'll get to come back up. I'm just reading through the list. Okay. And Victor Miller, who you've also testified. Perfect. Is there anybody who did not sign up that's wanting to testify? Or people online? It looks like we have so yes, that would be great if you can approach the microphone and say please come up, and your name and address for the record.
Yes, I'm Greg Buchanan, and I live in the Veltex building, which is about a half a block from the park. I'm on the board of the Veltex Condominium Association. And just want to say a few things. I think the other gentleman did a very good job of outlining some of the problems. I look at this as a solution in search of a problem. As was presented, there's funding available. They want to use the funding. I think they went and found some place that they could put it, but I think it's very inappropriate in terms of this being a historical park. When you look up the Portland Loo website, the very first thing it says is this is a modern design. That's pretty simple. It's a modern design. It's fine for a modern area, but this is not that. This is a park that is obviously historically themed, and Veltex building is another example of a building that has tried to take that historical aspect and showcase it, give it to the community. We have certain artifacts from what it was used previously, not as old as what this park has, but similar approach. And I believe this would hurt that. This is a modern structure and really does not fit in. An example of some of the problems, again, some of the marketing reasons or some of the marketing that the Portland Loo company comes up with is they say they have blue lighting. The lighting is blue because this would help people that are in there shooting up. It hides their veins. And that's part of the design of this loo. And if you're in an area that has that problem, I could see how that might be an advantage, but I hardly see how that fits into our neighborhood. Again, I'm not aware of any problems that we have in terms of people finding a place to find a restroom, other than, of course, we are adjacent to the bar district. And unfortunately, people leave there and do not always do the right thing. But I don't see a need for this. I see children over there again, there's a nearby school that brings the children seems like every day that has good weather. And I don't see how this is going to help them. I think they would feel very uncomfortable with the potential people that this can attract. So again, I think it's a solution in search of a problem. The money is available, but that doesn't mean it's appropriate to put this in here, and very much against it. So I appreciate your time.
Thank
Are there any
you.
questions?
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else in person wishing to testify? If not, we'll move to our online participants. Okay, I don't see anybody else in person. I did see a hand online.
Can you hear me?
I can. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi there, my name is Stanford McConaughey. Address is 5736 North Collister in Boise, Idaho. And thank you for hearing my comments. I'm speaking today in favor of a reversal of the certificate of appropriateness. And in other words, I would ask that the commission not allow the Portland Loo to be constructed at CW Moore Park. I disagree vehemently with some of the arguments raised by appellants having to do with public safety, drug use, houseless people. But I think what this commission should focus on is the historical integrity of CW Moore Park, and I don't think it's the right place for one of these facilities. My largest concern is the removal of 3 established magnolia trees to make room for the bathroom. I'm also concerned that it would require a reduced setback variance, which implies that there's a visibility or safety concern, especially to the children and adults who enjoy the park and use the sidewalk perpendicular to the alleyway in which the PL is set to be placed next to. Boise needs more accessible public restrooms, but with the utmost respect, I don't think the Parks Department did their due diligence in determining proper site for the Portland Loo. The new park at 6th and Grove is 1 block away. It's still in its planning phase, and it could be designed around a restroom facility like this. City Hall Plaza would be a better site given its openness and foot traffic. The Grove Plaza, in my opinion, would be the best site because it's even more open and has even more foot traffic. If the city wanted to prioritize public restroom access, we would pour money and energy into well thought out plans that don't threaten the historic nature of our already diminishing open spaces or our extremely precious tree canopy. If the city wanted to prioritize the plight of houseless people, it would pour money and energy into housing first solutions. Regardless of federal assistance, I'm concerned that such a large expenditure, both one-time and ongoing, since the Portland Loo has a significant annual upkeep cost, will not be utilized to its fullest potential, which should be the priority for the decision makers in the city generally and the Parks Department specifically. I just don't believe that the CW Moore Park is the best spot for the Portland Loo. I think this process has turned into somewhat of a political battle between neighbors to the Belgravia, but the historicity of our city concerns all citizens of Boise, past, present, and future. If you've ever spent time at CW Moore Park, you know that its size is part of its charm. And even though the new park at 6th and Grove will be technically smaller, the space at CW Moore Park is taken up by magnificent features that contribute to its historical nature, like the water wheel, like the stream, like the sandstone signage memorializing historic buildings no longer in existence, like the arch, like the historic turret on the southwest corner. There are no other places in Boise like CW Moore, which serves as a living monument to so much that has changed in our community over the years. And I respect the comment of the previous person giving testimony, the gentlewoman who said that there's a lack of context. And I would just encourage that the new master plan include adding that context to some of the features of the park. But what I don't think we should do is tear out these 3 magnolia trees, replace them with 1 new magnolia tree, and put the Portland Loo in the CW Moore Park. So with that, I would yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conahey. Do we have anybody else online wishing to testify? No? All right. Hearing none, I will open it up to a rebuttal by the appellant. What's our time?
I believe it's 5 minutes.
5
Madam
minutes.
Chair.
Matthew Reese, do I need to restate my address?
Yes.
499 West Main Street, Boise, Idaho, 83702. There were a couple of things that were mentioned that I just wanted to clarify. One is I am here representing myself as a unit owner of Belgravia. I'm the board president and I represent the board the board consists of 7 members. So I'm not representing all unit owners in our building. So that's been I never intended that to be the case, but it does represent the view of the board and me. As far as the use of the park, I think the picture you have, I think I was actually at the park that day. That was like the first warm day we've had here in Boise in a long cold winter, and there was a lot of people there. The park typically doesn't see that many people. Everybody would, on the one side, somebody says we need a restroom, but they really don't provide a whole lot of data on the need. It'd be like saying somebody, we don't need a restroom. Well, where's the data? I have seen a porta potty out there on that site maybe 3 or 4 times in the last 5 years. So, and I'm sure they have records of just exactly how many times. If it's used over a weekend, usually that's what it is. There's a wedding event and something will get delivered there on a Friday and picked up on a Monday. I see it when it happens, and it's very rare when they do that. I would just want to go back to stress just about the aesthetics. I think it's a little pretentious to criticize the park. It's not intended to be a historic park. It is a historic themed park. It's like a museum piece. It has historic artifacts. It's part of our history. And it's a very well thoughtfully designed park. And I think any modifications to that park should respect that. And you can go there. If you look at the benches, look at the bike racks. They are all intentionally designed to fit in with the theme of that park. And I just think that the proposed structure that is there is an abomination. It's just right up front, right at the main entry. It's just not an appropriate location for that restroom. So with that.
Yeah, I would just say Mr. Miller actually made some of our points.
I
So
need your name.
Victor Miller, 834 West Two Rivers Lane in Eagle, kind of made some of our points. He said it was about events, but we already know that's average 10 events, and we don't need a loo for 365 days. He talks about DC. DC did the survey, but all the cities that we're talking about are slightly larger, but most of them are smaller than Boise, and they're having these problems. You mentioned graffiti and all the maintenance, all that. There's never been a budget. Like, I'd love to see the budget on what this is going to mean for the city, right? And you talked about the 3-dimensional commissioner parks, and on one side of the park is an apartment building. On another side, so this side of the park is apartment building. This is the Belgravia building. This is a line of trees. This is an alleyway between the park. There's actually no sight lines into there because it's blocked almost on every single side. Again, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to the manufacturer and what it tells us. It says it's not open to visible location with a lot of pedestrian vehicle traffic. It's not near a commercial area. Even she admitted it was a block away. And they always say you should have people that have already signed up to have eyes kept on it. We don't have that. It does not have nearby business community buy-in. Nobody asked the businesses or the community. It does not have good street lighting at night. Someone even mentioned, Mr. Miller mentioned, that if it was bad, we'd put in street lighting. We don't have it. That's right. And there are no arrangements have been made for the police monitoring at night. There's too many open questions, and it's for, if we're averaging 10 days of events, we don't need something there for 365 days. So lastly, the thing about the magnolias, right? Even Mr. Miller admitted that those are going to be off-site. So they're actually not going to be remediated. They're going to be like buying a carbon credits for some other company. They're going to be tree put somewhere else to make up for the one that's taken out here. The amount of disruption, it just hasn't been thought all the way through. And I think there's just a lot of unanswered questions. And I would beg you to not approve this. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll close the hearing and we will render a decision. So I invite a motion or discussion from my fellow commissioners to get us going.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I can start with some discussion. Initially, I was supportive of this deferral after we were handed the quite large study that we had not seen before. I felt that it was critical that the city of Boise review that, as well as for the commission to have time to review it before using that information to help us render a decision tonight. That being said, now that all parties involved have been able to look into this, and after the city of Boise's and Mr. Miller's testimony tonight, I feel much more confident in this location having a public restroom facility. Mr. Miller mentioned, and I mentioned in March that my son's preschool uses this park on an almost daily basis, as well as Cherie Buckner Webb Park, which they call Pink Tree. And knowing that the children are already using the Portland Loo at Cherie Buckner Webb Park, and knowing that the park or that facility already has needle drop points, and this one would as well, is no longer really that much of a concern to me. In terms of the magnolia trees, I think that's the one thing that I don't really feel that great about. But all in all, in terms of public safety, I think having a facility at this location would do more benefit than harm, especially when we're using the children as a reason to not have it there. I think, being the mother of a child that uses this park daily, it's more of a safety risk to have my kid have to cross 4 different streets multiple times to go back to use the bathroom at school. So with that, I think at this point I would be in support of denying the appeal.
Thank you, Commissioner Montoto. Do we have any other discussion or thoughts from my commissioners?
Madam Chair, I would say that I do appreciate everyone's testimony and everyone's thoughtfulness in this project. I question whether the things like considering the safety of the facility, the need for the facility, the cost for the facility, the logistics of maintaining the facility, whether that's really under the purview of the Historic Preservation Commission. We don't question a homeowner when they bring in an addition to their home. Are you sure you can afford this? Those are questions that we are not really a part of our purview. I feel that the placement is thoughtful. The park, the nature of the park, while it's in a historic district, the park itself is not an historic park. It has historic elements in it that are the bones of the city that used to be, and those are interesting. I feel the placement is respectful of that, while at least being practical in its location. I appreciate the notion of considering color of the facility. I think that will help it be a better element within the park, and in support of denying the appeal.
Thank you. Any other comments, Commissioner Pape?
I second a lot of that. I did spend the time researching and using all of that as sort of a benefit to our research in doing so. And I do have to agree regarding what our role is in making this decision. And I do think we look at things like safety to an extent, but at the same time, the Historic Preservation Commission is not always responsible for costs and looking at 10-year plans and things like that. So I do have to second that comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Pape. I agree with my fellow commissioners. I think that the fact that the closest public restroom is 9 blocks away is absurd in a city that's growing, in a city that we want to be lively, that we want to attract people to public spaces. Again, this is a public space, and public spaces goal is to attract and serve the public. And if the public is young children, I take my young children there, I take my college students there. I think that we do need to create amenities that can serve the public. This this site was compared to a museum, and museums have bathrooms. So I think, if we want people to be in this site, if we want eyes in this site, if we want people lingering here, we do need to provide the amenities that people need when they're in the site. And so I am in support of denial of the appeal. So I guess at this point, I'm looking for a motion and a second.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Montoto.
I move to deny the appeal of DRH 22-00437 based on the findings based on the original staff approval.
I have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Parks. Clerk, please call roll.
Pape,
Aye.
Maroni,
Aye.
Montoto.
Aye.
Parks,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we will be hearing item number 5, DRH 23-00059, 507 East Logan Street, certificate of appropriateness to demo an existing non-contributing structure and construct a new single-family residence on the property. Staff, can we please get the report?
Yes, this is as stated, request to demo an existing non-contributing structure and construct a new single-family residence. It's in the East End, and the house is non-contributing, was made non-contributing by a previous DRH application that is in the packet because of condition issues. It lost its contributing status, so it is acceptable for the bits of the property that remain to be demolished. And here's the photos. That was, of course, the site location. Here's the photos demonstrating the current extant condition and the alley view. And as you usually see, neighbors' properties to get a sense of height and scale and what is around there. And the property across the street, I'll point out now, is one in it. The tree obscures it, but it's a sort of a craftsman bungalow, 1.5 stories, fairly tall house. This is the proposed site and landscape plan to give you an idea of what's going to be constructed. And here is the elevation and some floor plans to get the sense of that. More elevations. This highlights or shows you the house itself and the proposed detached garage ADU structure. And this house does relate to the height and widths of properties in the area. It has massings and forms similar to neighboring property. It uses similar building materials and fenestrations and other elements to make the form. And the roof form itself is congruous with other forms found around it. It has a front porch, which is appreciated, desired, and often seen in the historic district. And the peak height is 22 feet 6. And for the ADU, and 23 feet 7 to the peak for the primary residence. And so it's subordinate in height to a degree. And it uses the gable roof and shed dormers and exterior stairway to the second story, as we see often in ADUs. And lap siding and design elements. It's a compatible appearance, and it's not going too far into historicity to make it seem like a current construction. And with all of that, the staff recommends approval, and I will stand for questions.
Thank you. Do we have questions for Mr. Jarvis? Yeah. All right. Hearing none, we will now hear from the applicant. If you can, are you present?
Yes.
Excellent. Step forward. We'd like to hear your name and address for the record.
Thank you. I'm Doug Adams. I live currently at 505 West Broad Street, Boise, Idaho 83702. And I am the owner of 507 East Logan Street, Boise, Idaho 83712. Madam Chair, members of the commission, thank you for having me tonight. First of all, as you could see in those photos of the existing structures that are there, thank goodness that it is non-contributing, it is uninhabitable. There's nothing to that structure that we want to bring forward in the future plans. As provided, not only does it have the new site plan that does abide by all setbacks and everything like that, but also fits in with the aesthetics of the surrounding neighborhood. Like Mr. Jarvis had mentioned, does fit that craftsman style. There's no modern architecture with that, the flat roofs, things like that. So as the plan is proposed to you all, I seek approval for the certificate of appropriateness, and I stand before you for questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? No? All right, thank you. Hearing
you.
none. We will go ahead and hear from the neighborhood association if a representative is here.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Sheila Grisham. I live at 1204 East State Street, and I am speaking on behalf of the Easton Neighborhood Association tonight. I will say I was really concerned about what was going to take the place of the home that was moved from contributing status to non-contributing status. And this is a breath of fresh air. We were so concerned about how the sizing and the massing and everything was going to come together. And this looks like it's going to fit in really well with the neighborhood. So thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, I will go to the sign-up sheet. I do not have anybody on the sign-up sheet. Is there anybody present wanting to testify that didn't get a chance to sign up? Anybody online wanting to testify? No? All right. Hearing none, we have a rebuttal by the applicant. If you'd like to come up and say any final thoughts. Sounds like you're good. Okay, we'll close the hearing and render a decision. So I open to either a motion or conversation.
Madam Chair, if I may, normally with situations like this, I think, I know for me and several of my fellow commissioners, an example of what happened here could set a pretty negative precedent in our historic districts. But I think this application maybe took a really bad situation and set a good example of what you could potentially do. And as the Easton Neighborhood Association representative mentioned, it is definitely a breath of fresh air. And so with that, I will make a motion if possible. I move to approve item number 5, DRH 23-00059 based on the recommended conditions in the staff report.
Great. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Perfect. Please call roll.
Pape,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Montoto,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Parks,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Fantastic. Thank you. Moving on to item number 6, DRH 23-00060 at 702 East McKinley Street, certificate of appropriateness to construct an accessory dwelling unit above an existing detached garage on the property.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. As you just mentioned, this is a request to construct a new accessory dwelling unit above an existing garage located on McKinley Street in the East End. The site is located on the north side of McKinley, adjacent to the Cottonwood Creek flume, and thus is treated as a corner lot for setback purposes. Photo of the existing residence, a modest, minimalist, traditional structure exists on the property, and at the rear of the property is an existing single-story garage. So the applicant has proposed to take this existing garage and add an accessory dwelling unit on top of the structure. The site plan for reference showing the location of the primary home and the accessory structure on the property with the alley at the rear. So the applicant has proposed an accessory dwelling unit over the garage that exceeds the height of the primary structure by approximately 3 feet 3 inches. In addition to that, it does have significant shed dormers on the sides of the structure, which exceed 8 feet in width. That classifies this structure as a full 2-story structure. We would certainly, and the guidelines would certainly encourage a 1.5-story structure in this location that would very closely match the height of the existing home. And then using those 1.5-story principles to kind of bring the massing of the structure down to be appropriate. Therefore, with the height of the structure much, significantly taller than the existing residence and more massive, we do recommend denial of the application. I would stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? No? All right. Hearing none, I'll have the applicant come forward. Need your name and address, please.
My name is Joe Levitch, and I'm at 114 East 35th Street in Garden City, 83714. That's where my office is. I'm here in support of the application to have this structure, ADU, be built on top of an existing garage. The existing garage has a flat roof, and in speaking with Mr. Jarvis, we'd discussed that changing it to a peaked roof to match the existing structure, the house, which is only about 800 square foot house, would be more congruent with historic guidelines. And then without demoing the existing structure, building essentially a second story, which is an ADU where people would actually live, would have to have just a little bit more altitude than the existing home. And I understand that the guidelines are to make the secondary structure subordinate to the first. But again, they're guidelines, and this house is very small. None of the attic is being used in the existing residence. And so to make the existing garage work, we have to have a little extra altitude for people to get around in it. And the dormers on the sides were designed to give the secondary structure harmony with the first, and shed dormers seem to be a good way to do it. I saw in the previous application, they were also using shed dormers in a 1.5 story structure. This wasn't intentionally designed to be a 2-story structure. It was, trying to figure out a way for people to be able to stand up tall and have enough square footage to be able to create a structure where people could actually inhabit it and or use as an office space, since the existing home only has 1 bedroom and 1 bathroom. I believe that, I'm willing to look more carefully at bringing this structure down. I don't know that it's an absolute law that they have to be exactly, or the secondary structure has to be subordinate to the first. Perhaps there's something we can do to shorten the height of the project. And so my question is, if we were able to match the height of the house by lowering the garage, would that take care of all of the issues that this particular request for appropriateness, would that resolve the issues? And if so, we would be willing to compromise. Other than that, I think the altitude was the primary reason for not supporting this. So if the process has taken quite a long time to get to this point, and I think my client would be becoming exhausted at this point, if we could come up with some sort of resolution, I would like to move this thing forward and get support of staff and the commission. That's basically all I have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? No? All right. Thank you very much. Is there anyone representing the neighborhood association here?
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Sheila Grisham. I live at 1204 East State Street, Boise 83712. And tonight I am speaking on behalf of the East End Neighborhood Association. It has some concerns with this application. This is a contributing small bungalow that is surrounded by homes of similar size, with the exception of the new build to the west, which was recently replaced due to a fire. The concerns that we have are the height and the full 2 stories. We would prefer to see 1.5 stories. This ADU is being built at the back of the lot that has a one-way only alley. There is a lot of bike, ped, and vehicle traffic at this crossing, and it has been recognized by ACHD as a high volume traffic problem. With construction at this site, the problem will only get worse and potentially dangerous. We feel that this should be taken a look at before any construction begins of any kind. ENA was not notified of the neighborhood meeting, and we are concerned that there was not a meeting with the neighbors to notify them of the construction project. The hearing notification was posted behind the owner's fence and was not easily visible to the neighbors. We are concerned that the homeowner was not aware of the proper application process, and therefore the neighbors were not properly notified and given the opportunity to look at the project and to comment. We support the staff's findings at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I will move to our sign-up sheet. Mr. Lovich is the only one on here right now. Are there other members here that didn't get a chance to sign up wishing to testify? Anybody online? No? All right, hearing none. I welcome the applicant back up for his 5-minute rebuttal.
Joe Levitch, Levco Builders, 114 East 35th. In rebuttal, I apologize. My clerical error. I think there was frustration over the application process and then the delays and then I did not hold a neighborhood meeting, so I apologize for that. I typically do, and I typically have nobody respond. That was not the reason for not having that meeting. My fault. As far as the building in an area, we are well versed. My company is well versed at dealing with issues related to working in tight spaces, and I do believe we could mitigate any safety hazards. My observation of that particular street, which is hardly a street, it's more of an alley that people use, is something we could address easily. There's plenty of room on the lot for parking vehicles and or quick deliveries, et cetera. So I believe that we could mitigate that in speaking directly with the historic district representative, community representative. Yes, my question again is to staff, and perhaps this has to be deferred, is if the altitude is the primary concern and the secondary concern of safety, which I think we could address, were able to be resolved, could we move forward? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any final questions for the applicant? Hearing none, I will close the hearing and we will render a decision. So can I have a motion or discussion?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Montoto.
I do want to disclose on the record that I live within 300 feet of this project, and I did receive a mailer, but I will be abstaining.
Thank you. Other discussion or a motion?
So to just kind of start some discussion, the primary residence is very simple in nature. It's very simple in form. The garage in back, as it exists now, is definitely a secondary structure. The proposal provides additional housing, yay, an ADU. I think that's a great thing. I think that the proposed design is a simple design as well in relationship and congruent with the architecture of the house itself. I think in my view, it is the height, the fact that would be extended above the height of the primary dwelling unit. I think that perhaps a shortened design would not be inappropriate, or at least for consideration. I'd be curious to see what that looks like and how that would work with the primary dwelling unit.
Madam Chair, I also agree with Commissioner Parks. The height for me is my main concern. So if they could bring down the height. I'm also a little bit concerned about the neighborhood meeting not happening. I always think it's really important to involve the public and involve your neighbors. So even if it's an after the fact meeting, I think that should happen also.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. I guess my thoughts are, it is a small structure, which means that it will easily be overwhelmed. And so that does need to be considered when we're creating the ADU. I would be comfortable passing it back down to staff if they can get it within the same height as the house for them to approve it at that level. I don't know if we want to see it come back up. Thoughts, discussion on that? If you want to see it, you can.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
I feel that it is in our best interest to support that if that is a possibility. I would be in support of that myself.
Thank you, Commissioner Pape.
I like to see a design, especially if it's changing. So, I think I'd like to see it again.
I think that's a very valid thing.
So now we're looking for a motion and some direction for them.
Correct. So I would move to defer this item to our June 26th meeting, if that's appropriate time for the applicant to present a revised proposal that is no taller than the primary dwelling unit and of comparable minimal traditional design as you presented to us this evening.
I'll second that motion.
All right, if we can call roll.
Pape. Pape,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Montoto,
Abstain.
Malloy,
Aye.
Parks,
All right.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. With that, we'll be moving on to item number 7, DRH 23-00061, 1519 West Fort Street, certificate of appropriateness to construct an attached garage and living space above an existing single-family residence. Staff, can we get the report, please?
Okay, yes,
Thank you.
this is in the Hayes Street Historic District. It's a contributing structure. Here's the site to give you a sense of its location and its proximity to the North High School. Here's the grouping of site photos that were provided. It is, as you'll see, a mission. It's a minimum. I'm going to call it something it isn't, a minimalist mission revival, which is not really what it is, but that's close enough. But here's some site photos of adjacent properties and properties on the site. Red is indicating the site structures that currently exist behind the property. And to the right, we're seeing the site plan that shows a hyphenated garage with bedrooms above. And I believe a recreation room is also above. So it's different than a garage ADU. Here's the floor plans that demonstrate what I'm referring to. And here are the elevations that indicate that the proposed structure is slightly taller, but within a pretty good range of the existing residence. And as you can see, the hyphen sort of differentiates itself by reutilizing extant materials on the outbuilding that is to be demolished. And here's two more elevations of the garage. Some perspective drawings to give you a sense of how it looks. And as I mentioned, this is attached, which is a bit unusual, but this is attached by that narrow hyphen. It's not like it's a complete, totally attached square home back to the back of the property. And that hyphen in that hallway needs to happen because it's a bedroom access. So the kids, et cetera, and the applicant will speak to this too, probably have a covered way to get to the bedroom. So, you don't want that separated as part of the house versus when we usually see a garage 80 units is that other thing that is out back. But the roof lines, the pitch and the orientation, they all relate to the primary residence. A lot of work was put forth back and forth with us and the applicant to get the forms to be more congruous with the forms of the existing house. And the roof peak is, the addition roof peak is 11 feet, 11 inches. That is actually taller, I think, than the primary residence. So with that, I will stand for questions. And we do recommend approval.
Thank you. Do we have questions for staff?
Madam Chair, I have a question. So Richard, you list out the history of previous actions, and I was wondering when the windows on the front of the house were replaced. They're a different configuration.
Oh, do not. The applicant may be able to speak to that. I don't know if he's had ownership long enough, but I don't have that right at hand when that happened.
Thank you.
Other questions for staff? All right, hearing none, we'll now hear from the applicant. You can state your name and address.
Drew Alexander, address 1519 West Fort Street. Thanks, Richard. First of all, thanks to Josh and Richard for providing information early on and then working with us as we've moved this design over the past few weeks, few months. So thanks for your time. Wanted to just quickly run through this presentation that has a little bit more context about where we've started, where the staff recommendation is at now. So hopefully this summarizes relatively straightforward. If you start at the top and work your way down to the bottom, that's how it's been iterative along the way. So we started with version 1, which was a very minimalist mission revival approach to be in context with the home. It uses the same slope on a hipped roof. You'll notice the main house doesn't have dormers on it at the moment, but the pitches in the first version were trying to complement the existing roof form. We then began working with staff and trying to make some improvements just based on the form, the massing to read, I believe, more as a 1.5 story. Our home is a garden level home that has 5 steps from street level up to it. So a lot of the volume is above grade, helps us in this instance. I think the peak of our home is around 19 feet. We didn't like the second version as much with kind of the craftsman style look. It didn't feel appropriate. So then we landed at version 3, which has a combination of hip dormers and a clipped gable. So overall, through that, the height was able to reduce by 5 inches. We relocated the chimney from its original location into the connector. And then a couple other things that we've already mentioned, kind of toned down the colors on the connector and also on the roof. I'll just quickly go through each elevation for you. So again, where we started at the top. And in the current iteration, the floor plan really calls for about a 1.5 car garage. So even more of that footprint is less of an accessory use and more of an addition to the home. And I think that was an interesting part of our dialogue with this project is how do you differentiate between an accessory use and an addition? And my experience in planning, oftentimes accessory uses are incidental or subordinate, like a garage with a standalone ADU or studio or greenhouse like we have here. 70% of this request is actually an extension of the primary function of the home. Highlighting that here for you, you see that the connector doubles as a circulation for the upstairs space. There's a mudroom and laundry room as you exit the garage. And in that above space, there's, yes, kind of a rec area, bathroom, and then 2 bedrooms for our family. So in our opinion, when you look at the guidelines, it seems important because there's a lot of call outs for accessory uses versus new additions. And we thought that was helpful as we walk through the guidelines with this. To kind of our intent, we did want to keep things simple, minimal as possible. We wanted to preserve as much of that primary home as we could, not do an addition off the back or above, but to preserve it as much as we can. And you can see it's all still there. There will be a small connecting element where the hallway comes into the home. And from Fort Street, where probably 95% of the foot traffic happens, that little highlight is what you would see of the roof beyond. Madam Chair, Commissioner Malloy, to your question, you may be noticing there looks to be a garage on this home, but that was converted years ago. That's actually a portion of the home now. There's not currently a garage on the property. We've since improved that with kind of a more appropriate angled cedar with some transom windows on it. When we purchased the home over a decade ago, it had a fiberglass door on it that just did not read well with the property. Also, since then, we did change all the windows in the home to guideline compliant windows. They were vinyl windows before we did that. I'm happy to provide more information on the window, and we would be trying to make them match the same grid pattern that we have on the primary home with this addition. Additionally, we followed the guidelines to set the addition back, again, to help with the massing and scale language that you see in the guidelines, and to also just, again, preserve as much of that primary home as we could. We also relied on section 4.2 in the guidelines. That backside of our home is south facing. It gets a tremendous amount of daylight, which is especially great in the wintertime. We can almost heat our home during the day with the light that comes in through those windows. So we wanted to take advantage of the allowance in the guidelines to kind of decouple the massing in this way. Also cross ventilation, and it would hopefully sometime in the future allow us to maybe even install some photovoltaic, some solar panels on the home. All of that massing was intentional to help preserve that. The connector piece is specifically called out too in the guidelines. And you can see these examples that even have something similar where an addition is linked via a connector piece is called out here. And this just hopefully shows a little bit of how the design we have creates that type of space, this area with daylight, cross ventilation, and good solar access. I will say too that our property is in the R3 zone, so it's the high density residential area. We have 2.5 story structures behind us, and we felt like the final leg of this story is pushing it back to the alley is as proximate as we could to the vertical elements that are around us. I don't know if it would become as charming as these photographs, but this gives you some examples of some real world courtyards in architecture that kind of has the same vibe as our home. We love our home. We love this mission revival architecture, and this type of linkage to 2 different masses is fairly common when you look at that type of architecture. So we also felt like we weren't trying to recreate or force something on the property with this look. That said, we feel like we would be remiss to not ask the commission what your opinion is on where we started and where we're at now with some of the feedback. We do feel like the minimal nature of the initial request stays very consistent with the original home. This shows that chimney moved and the materiality changed. So these are just a couple images of you for you when you go into deliberation, because we still prefer where we close to what we started. We're more than willing to move the chimney, change the materials, and then comparing with where we're at now with guidance from staff. That said, we are eager to move forward. And if the latest iteration is what the commission also happens to support, we're ready and willing to move forward with that recommendation if that's where you happen to be. So with that, I'm happy to stand for some questions if you have them.
Thank you. Do we have questions for Mr. Alexander?
So not really so much a question, I guess, Madam Chair, thank you. I want to commend the applicant for your thoughtfulness in the design, whatever the commission's decision is. I appreciate the thoughtfulness that you went through in your design process. And I guess just to clarify, was the upper design, was that in our packet?
It may not be in your
It's not
packet.
in our packet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
and
maybe.
I don't think it is. No.
The packet contained the finalized kind of post-negotiation. Here's what we want to present only.
And so this is kind of the upper image that you're asking which we like better is
Exactly. It would be a relatively easy, we would keep the floor plan that we've proposed, and there would be a slight jog where you see the hip roof have that jog in the back. But that's the question we would appreciate asking the commission, what your feedback would be.
Was the top one taller
By 5 inches.
by 5 inches? Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Mr. Alexander, could you go back to, or yeah, I think you have the clicker. Could you go back to the slide that has all three elevations?
Yeah.
Please, thank you.
Like that one? Would that work? Okay.
That's great. Thank you.
Other questions? You still digesting? Yeah. All right. Well, hearing no questions, I think we can see if anybody from the neighborhood association is here.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, and we'll talk to you again in a minute.
Sandy Harmon, and I'm from the NENA Historic Committee. My address is 1404 North 7th Street. Madam Chair and Commission members, for transparency's sake, we would like to state that the homeowner is on the NENA board. Staff has recommended this project. The Historic Committee, our committee within NENA, would like some clarification regarding the connecting hallway. Especially since we are aware of another project coming up soon where the homeowner has gone to great expense to hide the connection between the house and the garage. It's our understanding that the standard is for the house and the garage to remain looking separate. And we understand the reason why the homeowner needs to have this corridor, but we want to be able to uphold standards in the neighborhood and not appear to allow for leniency when homeowners or builders have connections to this process. So additionally, we'd like to state that we preferred iteration 1 in style. We thought that it went best with the original home. And I think that's it for me.
Thank you so much. All right. We will go to our sign-up sheet, which I don't have anybody signed up. Is there anybody who didn't sign up who would like to speak to this project? Nobody in the room? Anybody online? Doesn't look like it. Okay. So applicant, you're welcome to come back up for a rebuttal, answer any questions.
Drew Alexander, 1519 West 4th Street. I don't know if I have a rebuttal, but if you have additional questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great, thank you. Any additional questions?
Can you flip to what I guess would be the backside of the garage? Do you have the backside of the garage elevation in your preferred scheme? Scheme 1?
If we could pull it up, I could walk you through how we could modify that quickly.
Does that,
What's that? Just if my PowerPoint could come back up, I think I could get to what Commissioner Parks is talking about.
okay. It's on that screen, but I guess it's not on the other screens. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't realize it was up for you. Yeah, so the first one is has two independent doors for car access. We would change that if we went back to that first massing and go back to a single, more of a 1.5 car garage entry, because the floor plan now calls for that mudroom, laundry room component on the left side of the image that you're seeing if you're looking from the alley. And that would be the primary change. We'd be happy to add a window along that facade outside of the laundry area like you see on the other iterations. But the chimney would go away. That was one thing we were more than happy to relocate in any scenario, just because it was so tall, and move it to the courtyard space.
And the reason for making the move in what was presented this evening, or at least in the packet, was, the version 1 definitely appears more as a 2-story project. And so the idea of moving to version 3 with working with staff, was it to?
I believe that was the general intent. Yeah.
Okay.
What we do though is lose the ability to really mirror that hipped roof. And from an elevation perspective, there's maybe even more horizontal height impact on that third iteration. But to answer your question, yeah, there would be some very modest changes to that alley elevation to bring it into that more 1.5 car entry and maybe an additional window placed.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? All right, hearing none, we'll close the hearing and render a decision.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Motion, discussion. Who wants to start us off? No wrong answers.
Okay, there's no wrong answers. I like version 3 more.
Okay.
So I'll just put that on the table and leave it there.
Madam Chair, I think that I'd like to address the issue of the connecting component that the NINA representative had brought up. I think it's important to remember that there are appropriate ways to have connections in a project. And I think that this application is a great example of that. And I would suggest that if NINA is ever approached by a resident with concerns about that, to direct them to the guidelines. Because I do think that the snippet of the guideline that Mr. Alexander showed completely and fully addresses that with great examples. As for the preference of which design I prefer, I actually also prefer the first. There's something about the roof line on the third that just doesn't quite do it for me. And yeah, I don't really have anything further.
All right, thank you. Any more comments or a motion?
Let's see. So, between the two versions, I think either way, it is a respectful way to provide an addition to a dwelling. I think the courtyard that you create in the center will be a delightful place to be. I completely agree with moving the fireplace to the shorter position, like you've shown, attached to the connector is the appropriate move. Between the two, option 3, the roof line is kind of complex. I understand what it's trying to do, though, and I appreciate that. And when we look at, the heights of additions that we make and sort of how they interplay with the original structure and I really don't know that I have a strong preference one way or the other, I would be happy to support either one in a motion.
All right, my 2 cents, I think it's a great project. I love it. I love the courtyard style. I think it's really interesting and adding kind of cool value to the home. I think I like version 1, but I do want to see the 1.5 car garage and the tiny window that's into the mudroom that version 3 has. I would support a motion for either.
I can attempt a motion, Madam Chair, but please, if I leave anything out, let me know. I move to approve DRH 23-00061, utilizing the first rendering version with a 1.5 car garage with the window into the mudroom. Did I leave anything out? And the other staff recommendations for approval and
The relocation of the fireplace to
the relocation of the fireplace
the connector wall.
to the connector wall. Period.
All right, do we have a second?
I will second that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Parks. Please call the roll.
Pape,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Montoto,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Parks,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
All right, thank you very much. We will move on to agenda item number 8, DRH 23-00087.
Madam Chair, can we possibly take a 5-minute break?
Absolutely. Yes, let's take a 5-minute break.
Thank you so much.
Try to crank through the last 3 before 10 o'clock. Back, hopefully Commissioner Papez. Hey, there you are. All right, excellent. So let's start with DRH 23-00087, 1009 West O'Farrell Street, certificate of appropriateness to construct a new detached garage with ADU above on the property. Staff, if we can get the report, please.
Yes, this property is located in the north end and is a contributing structure. Here's the site plan to get orientation. Here are the existing photos of the property itself. Some neighbors, views up and down alleys. Some adjacent properties and it and its relationship to the adjacent pocket park. The bottom 2 photos are staff photos taken to give an even clearer indication of its the existing structure's visibility from said park. Here's the site plan. The park, for your information, is in this area and below to the south or whatever direction. Here's the landscape plan and the floor plans indicating what is to be built there. And elevations of to give you an idea of the form, materials, and the mass of the structure. As I say, this is going to be a ADU above a detached garage. It'll be 1.5 stories in height. The height will be 18 feet 6, which is the same as the height to the peak of the existing house. And since the guidelines recommend that the accessory not exceed the height, it wins. It's right at it. It uses gable roofs and shed dormers and exterior stairways to the second story, thing we see often. Lap siding, congruous to the district. Siding and window materials are not called out, so they will be conditioned as they always are conditioned, just to ensure that we get the correct materials for the construction. And with that, the staff recommends approval. I will stand for questions.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions for staff?
Madam Chair, I have a question. Richard, so our guidelines state that it's 6.1.9, or no, sorry. The right one, yeah, 6.1.9, located in a accessory dwelling unit or garage, so that they require the removal of a significant site feature or primary building element. So it says it's generally not appropriate to do that. And I know we have a lot of historic garages that keep getting removed that are considered contributing to, the historic district. So why do we keep seeing staff approval of removal of contributing garages?
I would say generally, the garages are more often than not considered to be an accessory structure. And in rare instances, depending on what the property is, and let's say it's a historic garage / carriage house with caretaker room above, there's ways that a garage or an accessory building could possibly elevate to that status as being something that's worthy of keeping. But in general, they're for example, in the historic inventory forms, they're usually not referred to, though there's some variation to it. It's not part of the description of the process of the significance of the structure. And so it's just generally considered to be something that can be sacrificed versus the primary residence, which is the main crux of here's what matters and here's what's important. Here's what the public fronts. This is not, this is the part that is not along the alley. This is the part that's like everybody sees. So this one just happens to have the proximity to the park to make it visible from a public area. And just like a corner lot would be visible from the public area, it still is an accessory structure, not the primary historic residence.
Okay, I just was asking that the National Park Service has recently released new guidance for garages. So if they contribute to districts. So I think we should look into that in the future.
Okay.
No other questions for staff? All right, hearing none. We will now hear from the applicant. You can step forward to the mic, give us your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is John Strite. I live at 1009 O'Farrell, Boise, 83702. And I didn't know that, or I didn't believe that the garage was contributing. And I designed the new building within the limits that I could, which is the height of the house or less, 10% of the lot size or less, and the lot is 4,880 feet, and the footprint of the garage is 400 or an ADUs, 480. And I kind of really liked the way it came out, and I hope you approve it.
Great, thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
I do have one question, if I may. Mr. Straight, can you speak to what the materials you're planning on using? It looks like staff has conditioned them, but can you speak to what your plan is?
Yeah, actually, on one of the elevations, I put a note probably in the wrong place, but it did say that it would be smooth, hardy panel siding. The shingles would be composition that matched the house. The windows would be Anderson A100 series or similar. And I know I have to pass that through, but I think, before I do that, I'll, with staff, if I need to, I can't be more specific than that, Anderson A100 series. And they are they're not fiberglass. They're not wood or aluminum covered wood. They are a composition. I can't remember the name of it. They're pretty beautiful. And so anyway, it is on one of the elevations.
Thank you. I missed that. Thank you so much.
It looks like we can see it here. And so if there's no red flags for staff on that. Thank you for answering that.
That it?
Any other questions? Nope. I think we're good. Thank you so much. All right. And now time for the neighborhood association.
Hi, Sandy Herman, 1404 North 7th Street. Madam Chair and Commission, the homeowner was very thoughtful and communicative with the neighborhood on this project, and we see no issues with the approval of it.
Great, thank you. Love to hear that. Okay, so I will now go to the sign-up sheet. I do not have anybody signed up. Is there anybody present who wasn't able to sign up who would like to testify on this project? Nobody in the room? Anybody online? Doesn't look like it. All right. We have a rebuttal by the applicant. If you'd like to come back and say anything. All good? Okay. In that case, we'll close the hearing and we will render a decision. So I open for comments or a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll open up for comments. Minus the garage being historic, I don't have any other issues with the proposed design or the form or the massing. I think it fits within the neighborhood, but I would like to look at garages in the future and keep some historic ones.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm in full agreement with staff's recommended conditions of approval. And given that the neighborhood association is in support, there's no public opposition. I would move to approve DRH 23-00087 with staff's recommended conditions of approval.
Fantastic. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Parks. Please call the roll.
Pape,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Montoto,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Parks.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. All right, moving on to agenda item number 9, DRH 23-00110 at 2128 North 15th Street, certificate of appropriateness to relocate and expand an existing detached garage and construction ADU above on the property. Staff can get the report.
Certainly.
Thank you.
This property is in the north end and it is a contributing structure. Here's the site plan. Photographs showing the existing structure and structures in the adjacent vicinity. Some alley shots and more photos of adjacent structures and the rear yard, etc. This is a site plan indicating where the proposed structure will be. Floor plans. And here are elevations of the 2-story structure that is behind the 1-story existing historic structure. A couple renderings and some more elevations for context. And the guidelines state that it is generally not appropriate to add a new building to a site which does not maintain or blend with the height of buildings on adjacent structures. This property is a 2-story garage, whereas the house is a 1-story and will be taller than the residence as well as adjacent properties. And of note is that the actual difference in the building height is greater, but as you would have seen in the elevations, there's a grade change of approximately 1 foot downward through the backyard to site that garage ADU 1 foot below, so that adds a foot to the overall actual height. The mass size and height should be for an accessory structure. It needs to ensure that it is subordinate to the primary residence, and a 2-story accessory structure is discouraged when the house is a 1-story structure. We recommended the design to be modified to be a 1.5-story structure, which would have been more appropriate, but this is the proposal that wanted to be presented to the commission. The Secretary Standards 9 says that it will needs to be compatible with historic materials, size, scale, proportion, etc. As demonstrated, this proposed construction is of an incompatible size and scale and massing, and therefore does not meet this standard. With that, staff recommends denial. I will stand for questions.
Do we have questions for staff? No? All right, hearing none. Is the applicant here? Online, it looks like. Excellent. If we can get your name and address.
Yes, Rebecca Kent, 8774 Canterbury Street, Boise, Idaho, 83704.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Can I go ahead and share my screen? Is that possible?
It'll be just a second. Yes.
Okay,
Get that set up for you. Okay, that should be ready. And we can see it. So whenever you're ready, Rebecca.
Okay, sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. So this is the home at 2128 North 15th Street. And we are proposing a new garage with ADU above. This application was actually submitted last year, and we took into account several of the comments that were made at the last hearing, and made adjustments accordingly as much as we could. So the original application had the existing garage, which was on the alley, which has also experienced flooding because of the current location that we had proposed relocating. But because we were within setbacks and we had to ask for variances, that was part of the denial of the previous application. So we heard that and we moved the ADU garage into the property outside of the setbacks so that we met all of Boise City Code in our design. So this is some site photos. I wanted to point out the structure next to the east elevation off of the alley. There's the neighboring property kind of towers over the existing garage. So when looking at context of surrounding structures, all of the surrounding properties are taller than this house. So we wanted to pay attention to context, and we're not towering over anything adjacent. This shows the house to the south, and this shows the house across the alleyway. So again, like all larger structures, this is a smaller structure within the neighborhood. So we took a look at that in the design. So we did bring the original application had this structure 4 feet above the existing house. So we minimized it as much as we could and a lot of this design was trying to stay in harmony with the existing house. So the thing is, there's a lot of 1.5 stories that are achieve that 1.5 story status by being within the roof line, but we have a very shallow roof to work within here. So it would be out of character to the house if we did it 1.5 story within that roof line. So that was another reason why we tried to bring down the height without being your typical 1.5 story, just because we didn't have that steep roof to work within. And we still tried to keep the proportion very proportionate to the house. So, it's still submissive to the main structure. Right now we're only at 1 foot above, 1.5 inch above the existing structure. So this shows the other elevations, using similar materials. Again, and architectural elements is the existing house. And you can see in the massing here, we still tried to keep it proportionate to an accessory structure. And you can also see from the public right-of-way, this is not, you can't even see the house. So even though it is slightly taller than the existing structure, from the public right-of-way, that won't be noticeable. So that is the application.
Great, thank you, Ms. Ken. Do we have any questions for the applicant? All right, hearing none, we will move on to the Neighborhood Association.
Hi, Sandy Herman, 1404 North 7th Street. Madam Chair and Commission, this project is located on a block in an alley that has many unique and varied houses that have seen a lot of changes through the years. There are two-story houses on this block. The alley itself is unique as the north outlet turns and goes uphill to Hill Road. And on-site assessment helped us to see that this project will have little impact from the street. The slight slope of the property makes the height of the two-story against the one-story house negligible. The width of the lot makes the oversized garage possible. The property directly north of this property has a second story on the garage that, because of the slope, will likely appear taller than the proposed project. There's also another large two-story garage with very similar style to this one, just 2 doors down to the south. And I have a picture of that, but I didn't submit it, unfortunately. We like the proposed design and worry that changing the style to a 1.5 story with dormers would make it less harmonious with the house. We think this is a good example of adding density to the north end in a thoughtful and aesthetically pleasing manner. As always, we request down shielding lighting and permeable paving to be implemented.
Thank you. All right, I will now go to our sign up sheet. I do not have anybody signed up on this. Is anybody present that's wishing to speak to this project? Nobody in person, anybody online? It looks like we have someone, Matthew Lutz.
Hello.
Thank you, we can hear you. I just need your name and address.
Matthew Lutz, 2128 North 15th Street, Boise, Idaho, 83702.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, my internet connection's a little stable, so I might click out. Thank you for hearing this project. I just want to bring up that I believe that the last woman who spoke, Sandy, was also part of a team who came on site, who I got an email from Suzanne Yehle from the North End Neighborhood Association's historic team, who did also in that email talk to me or say that they thought that going to a 1.5 story would be incongruent with the existing structure with the dormer look, as well as yeah, they did mention that they thought they would wanting to know if I would be willing to downsize it. And at this point, you know, my existing structure is 2,400 square feet. The garage itself is about 500 square feet, and it is falling down, and it has a sagging roof line and it's bowing walls. So there's really no trying to make that or keep that historically relevant, because it really is a knockover at this point. It seems to me that what we're trying to do here, is congruent with the city's desire to infill and create more density. So it seems like it's in alignment with the city's overall goals. And at the end of the day, I'm trying to figure out how to house either my in-laws and or my kids potentially, if they want to stay here. They're both now 18 and 20. I work for the city and I don't have enough money to go buy another house, let alone in the North End. So I'd really like to try to stay within the city's guidelines of 1,000 feet or overall, which is what the proposal is, as opposed to downsizing it. Because with the cost of construction these days, like I could probably downsize it 20%, but that wouldn't save me 20%. And at the end of the day, I'd like to have this the most usable structure for both the garage aspect and the ADU aspect moving forward. So I don't believe that, I know we're in the historic district, but we're not in a national park. And I would really love to be able to move forward with this project and hope that you will approve it today.
Great, thank you so much. Is there anybody else wishing to testify in this project? No? All right. So hearing none, we can have the.
May I say one more thing?
Yes. Yes, you can, Mr. Lutz.
May I say one more thing?
Yes.
Okay. If you look at this, if you look at the staff report as well, I did include letters in there from my neighbors, the ones across the alley, Larry and Terry, that have the house that is like 6 foot above grade of mine, and then it's also a tall 2-story. I've got 3 other neighbors on either side to the south of me, and then the 2 to the north of me, all of which are in agreement that they're totally okay with us doing this project. So I've done some due diligence and talked to my neighbors, and my neighbors are 2 thumbs up. Go ahead, do it. We want to see be able to get this done. So I have been trying to be respectful and honorable of the other people who live at least in the immediate surrounding of me and had full support for the project. So I just wanted to throw that in. So thank you.
Great, thank you. And I do see those letters in our packet, so I appreciate that you did the work and talked to your neighbors. So now we're moving to the portion that's the rebuttal by the applicant. So Mr. Lutz or Ms. Kent, whoever wants to take on that 5-minute rebuttal, you're welcome to speak more to this project.
All I wanted to add was yes, the owners have very wonderful relationships with their neighbors, and they were very supportive of this project and the design that we came up with. And I just leave it open for any more questions for us.
Great, thank you so much. All right, with that, we will close the hearing and render a decision. I open up for discussion or for a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll start, if I may. Typically, anytime you have a accessory structure that is taller than the main structure, it's a hard no in the guidelines. And that is why staff has given the recommendation that they have. Given the unique situation of this site, and the fact that there's no opposition from the neighborhood association or any of the surrounding neighbors, and that the slope of the site would essentially not be obvious that there would be a significant height difference. I would actually support this. I think it's a beautiful design, and kind of the right recipe all around for my support.
Thank you, Commissioner Montoto.
Madam Chair, I guess, yeah, as the new guy, I was curious how the commission would view a change in topography as it would relate to primary versus secondary structure. I think obviously that's a reality of this site that makes it somewhat unique in the districts. The design, it's okay. I have architecturally maybe some issue with window proportion and placement, but I don't know that it's enough to be in strong opposition to it, given the potential that the topography helps with the overall massing perception of that secondary structure.
Madam Chair, yeah, I agree with Commissioner Parks. There is something I don't like. Commissioner Montero, I'm not in love with the design. I think there could be some tweaks maybe to the design, but it's not enough, I think, to deny the application. I think you wouldn't be able to see it. I hope that's true, but I wouldn't deny the application.
All right, so it sounds like, given the height of the structures around it, given the topography of the site, we're all in support. So if somebody could make a motion and we can take a vote.
Madam Chair, I move to approve DRH 23-00110 based on the topography of the site and surrounding properties with staff's recommended conditions of approval.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Montoto, do we have a second?
Staff did not recommend approval, though.
Oh, that's right. Scratch my motion. I'll start over. I move to approve DRH 23-00110 based on the topography of the site, limiting the height perception, period.
Giving that some thought. Sorry. Yes, I will second that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Parks. Please call the roll.
Pape,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Montoto.
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Parks,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Moving on to agenda item number 10, DRH 23-00113 at 229 North Flume Street, certificate of appropriateness to construct a new two-story detached garage on the property. Staff, can we please have the report?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Just for reference, we will bring back revised findings and conditions of approval on that last one for your adoption next month. But this application is located at 229 North Flume Street, and it is a request to construct a new detached garage with accessory dwelling unit above. For reference, the site is located on the west side of Flume Street, adjacent to the Pioneer Cemetery. Currently, the site contains a shop, which is not historic in nature, and an existing covered patio. Those will both be removed. And the applicant would propose to construct a new garage with a studio above, not an ADU. Access from the alley. The existing residence is identified as no style in the survey on record and is non-contributing to the district. So the applicant has proposed a contemporary shed roof accessory structure with the studio above. It is approximately 2 feet 5 inches taller than the primary structure and has been designed with a form, materials, window patterning, and a garage door, which is rather contemporary in nature. The guidelines, certainly discourage accessory structures, as we've heard tonight, to not be taller than the primary structure. This is taller. And additionally, the contemporary design and materials are generally not congruous with the historic district and the surrounding properties. With that, we have recommended denial of the application. The applicant is certainly here tonight to present, and I would stand for any questions.
Thank you. Do we have questions for staff? No? All right. Hearing none, we'll hear from the applicant. Just need your name and address, please.
Good evening. Thank you all for still being here. My name is Amy Allgaier. I live at 1402 North 22nd Street, and I'm the architect for this project. Couple corrections. Josh caught that it's not an ADU at this point in time. It's currently a studio. It has a half bath, no kitchen, no shower. And secondly, there's a typo on the summary page of the staff report. It says the studio is 2 feet 5 inches taller than the existing home, and it's actually only 1 foot 8 taller than the home. The current difference in height is noted on page 30, and the actual heights of the house and the ADU are also correct in the staff report. It's just that summary page that was off. So the staff report cites 2 main issues with the current design. Thank you. The height of the studio and the style of the roof. So I'd like to address the style of the roof first. So the original home has an intersecting gable and had an open front porch. And over the years, the porch was enclosed and additions were made to the side and the rear. And all of those additions were covered with shed roofs. In this diagram, you can see the original gables in white and all the later shed roofs in gray. And in this photo, we can see, which is taken from the front sidewalk, you can see the front edge of one of those shed roofs protruding beyond the original gable. And there's also a side shed there over one of those additions. So there's shed roofs visible already on the existing home. It's also worth noting that this house is non-contributing. The owners intend to update the house, and they have a lot of flexibility in what they do to it based on that non-contributing status. In fact, a future owner could remove the home completely and build something totally different here. The style of the house, as listed in the staff report, is no style. So we're asking the owners to better match a new studio to a non-contributing home that literally has no style. It doesn't seem like a wise move. The adjacent homes are both newer construction. The home to the north was built in 2014, and it's a traditional style bungalow, though clearly more modern construction. And the home to the south was constructed in 2006. It has contemporary styling, including some flat panel siding on portions of the home. And you can see in this sketch that both houses are much taller than the existing home and the proposed studio. This slide shows a cross-section of the property. And we have a 6-foot human standing out there in the street. And while the peak of the shed roof is clearly a little bit higher than the house, you can see that that's not visible from the street, from the right-of-way. I'm not completely sure when shed roofs on accessory structures became unacceptable. They're very traditional roof forms. I've personally had 2 accessory structures with shed roofs approved, both of them on properties with very traditional homes. This garage ADU was approved at 820 East Jefferson Street in 2020. You can see the home that it's adjacent to on the right. This is a really wide lot. So that garage ADU sat toward the back of the lot, but adjacent to that home, completely visible from the right of way. And this ADU was approved at 1910 North 8th Street. The contributing house that it sits behind is shown there on the right. I'm sure there are many other examples. These are just 2 that I happen to have had approved in the past few years. So those 2 properties had contributing homes. The property we're discussing tonight is non-contributing. So it seems like that would make the shed roof even less of an issue. Next, I'd like to show how the recommended gable roof with dormers solution doesn't really create a better height situation for us. Our current design features a 2 and 12 sloping shed roof. The height set to create 321 square feet of habitable space in the studio. And this keeps the overall size of the structure below 1,000 square feet. So we don't have to get a zoning certificate, and we can use reduced setbacks so we can maintain and preserve more of the backyard and that patio area. So this is option number 1. It shows a gable roof design. It matches the existing height of the house. It creates 260 square feet of habitable space in that studio area. You can see that space outlined in light blue in the center. So 260 square feet is about 20% less than the design that we have proposed. And that space is straight down the center of the structure. So this effectively doesn't allow us to put windows on those side walls. The owners do want the option to potentially turn this into an ADU at some point in the future. This design isn't conducive to that because 1, it's very small, and 2, we can't get egress windows on those side walls because they're too low. So this is option 2. It improves on option 1 by raising that dormer to a 7-foot head height. This allows for habitable space that extends over to that side wall. We can have windows on that wall, and now that wall could potentially provide egress windows from an ADU that could go in there at some point in the future. But it is only 4.5 inches shorter than the shed roof design that we have proposed. Also, the dormer we're showing can only be 7 feet wide. 7 feet's not wide enough to create a functional living room. It's not wide enough for a bedroom. It's just kind of an awkward little nugget of space. So, because if we go wider than 7 feet on that dormer, then we're over 1,000 square feet. So we lose our reduced setbacks and we eat up that back patio area. You can see how much that structure would move into the site if we go over 1,000 square feet. It's also worth mentioning that this roof slope is very flat. It doesn't match the style of the steep gables on the existing home. So far, all of these options are considered full 2-story because they're over 18 foot to the midline. Option 3 shows a more traditional gable style. It has a steeper slope. It's 9 and 12. This better matches the style of the existing house, and it is considered a 1.5 stories. But as you can see, the peak is higher than all the other designs. This design is 8 inches taller than the shed design. That makes it 2 feet 4 inches taller than the house. And we do have similar issues keeping the square footage under 1,000 square feet. So if we're trying to keep the potential for the future ADU on the table, which the owners very much want to do and which our current zoning code seems to encourage, the only gable design that actually decreases our height is option 2. So we save 4 inches in height, but the space that's created with the narrow dormer isn't super functional. And we're doing this also that we don't have a shed roof that's adjacent to a home that does have shed roofs on it. The concern was also expressed about the massing and the visual impact of the shed roof design. So I've done a diagram of the street facing facades of all four options. I apologize, they're a little light, but you can see that they're all actually super close in area. There's only 12 square feet of difference in the square footage of the street facing facades. Option 2 has the largest massing of all. Our original shed design is slightly under that. Option 1, which matched the height of the existing house, is of course the lowest. So I feel like we've worked hard to balance the site constraints, the height of the structure, and the usability of the space. The studio really is mostly hidden behind the house. The existing home has shed roofs. We have examples of shed roofs on accessory structures being approved in the past. This house is non-contributing. It has aluminum siding and it has painted brick. A future owner could remove the house entirely. And given the heights of the existing homes on either side, they could build something much larger than the proposed studio. So the recommendation for denial based on the shed roof and the studio's height does not seem reasonable for this particular project. And we've spoken with the East End Neighborhood Association. They indicated they had no concerns about the style or the height. And we have letters of support from both neighbors on either side. I'm going to turn the remainder of my time over to the owner who's here, and then we'll stand for questions.
Thank you. We just need your name and address.
Hi, my name's Nate Isaac, 229 North Flume Street, Boise, Idaho, 83712. Thanks for having me. I guess in short, my wife and I are Idaho natives. She's a Boise native. I've lived in this house for 20 years and we want this home to be our forever home and retire in it. What we are suffering from is work from home constraints with our office. We gave up both our spare bedrooms. Our home is fairly small. It's about 1,574 square feet. Not a lot of room. So the options we weighed were build what our neighbors built and scrape it because we've seen that can be done, or try and preserve our house that was built in 1900 by developing a little more space for ourselves. We're trying to design a house that can be built in a way that is congruent with the environment. So the south facing shed roof would support solar panels, which we'd like to build into our project. And it also gained our neighbors' approval for not blocking their solar heating in their living room of their new house. We've talked to all the neighbors. They have all approved this. They said they would really like this project to go forward. We don't have anyone saying no so far. And really what we'd like to do is preserve our 1900 built house and have a garage with some space, because right now we're running out of it. And I think that in relation to a lot of the, I think this is a part where I have an architect, but some of the materials built, we're not sold on any final materials. What we would like is to build the shed roof garage in a way that we can then match the house to, that fits with the Preservation Society's wants and with the historic district. And that those projects should be happening in 2 to 3 years. We'll see how building goes and when we can get a garage built. So that's all I got. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Does anybody have questions for the architect or the homeowner? Yeah.
Both of the structures we're tearing down have shed roofs on them right now.
All right. Thank you. Questions from the commission? No? All right. Hearing none, we will move to the Neighborhood Association.
Hi, my name is Sheila Grisham. Good evening, Commissioner, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Sheila Grisham. I live at 1204 East State Street, Boise, 83712. The ENA Historic District Committee usually agrees with the city staff's findings, especially when it's a denial. However, this time we were a bit surprised that this application was denied, especially since the roof wasn't that much taller than the house itself. Given the homes on either side and their sizing and massing, the new structure just didn't seem like it was that big of a deal. I want to thank you for not wanting to scrape your house, because that's our biggest concern, especially with non-contributing homes. If we can keep this house and give them a little leniency with their garage and their studio space, we would prefer to see that. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sheila. All right, you have 5 minutes for a rebuttal if there's anything you want to add. No? All right. Then with that, oh, I'm sorry, we're not to the rebuttal yet. Is there anybody here who would like to testify? I don't have anybody on my sheet. Nobody in the room? Anybody online? Nope. All right. So still good, no rebuttal. Perfect. Okay. So with that, then we'll close the hearing and we'll render a decision. So I'm looking for discussion or motion.
Madam Chair, I don't have any issues with this project. We got 2 non-contributing homes on either side. We have a non-contributing house. I'm glad you want to keep your existing house. That's great. I actually like the little like mid-century alteration at the front of it. Richard, keep doing what you're doing. I know you denied it. That's good. Following the guidelines, but I think we have an exception here. So if anybody has any opposition, I can make a motion.
I have nothing to add.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I move to approve DRH 23-00113.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Montoto. Please call the roll.
Pape,
Aye.
Maroney,
Aye.
Montoto,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Parks,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Fantastic. That concludes our meeting for tonight. Thanks for hanging in there.